The grand hall of the Cauldrith Imperial Palace gleamed with crystalline walls that caught the light of 3 suns streaming through massive windows. Lady Sarath Volcoran stood at the altar in her full ceremonial armor, her 4 arms crossed in a gesture of resigned duty. She was 8 feet of violet-skinned warrior nobility, bioluminescent markings tracing patterns down her neck and arms that pulsed with her frustration. Her reputation as a fleet commander was legendary. She had broken pirate armadas and brought entire systems under imperial control. Now the council had ordered her to marry a human. Marcus Chun stood beside her, barely reaching her shoulder. He wore the simple diplomatic robes of Earth's ambassador corps, dark fabric that seemed plain compared to the jeweled armor surrounding them. His brown skin and black hair marked him as distinctly human, and to Sarath's eyes, distinctly fragile. No natural armor, no claws, no bioenhancements, just soft flesh and quiet eyes that seemed to take in everything. The high priest raised his 6 hands in blessing, chanting in Old Cauldrith. Sarath barely listened. She had argued with the council for weeks, but the decision was final. The human homeworld, Earth, held strategic resources, and their support was needed for the war against the Outer Rim insurgents. A marriage bond between their nobility and human leadership would seal the alliance. Politics demanded this sacrifice, and Sarath was nothing if not obedient to the Empire. Do you, Lady Sarath Valkaran, accept this union? The priest intoned, "I accept," Sarath said, her voice flat. Do you, Marcus Chen of Earth, accept this union? I do, Marcus replied quietly, his voice steady and unremarkable. The crowd of nobles erupted in polite applause. Sarath caught the smirks and whispered comments from the Dravik clan section. They found this amusing. Watching a decorated war hero bound to what they considered a weak species, Lord Dravik himself watched with barely concealed contempt, his massive frame adorned with trophies from 100 battles. The ceremony concluded with traditional blessings. Sarath and Marcus were now bound by imperial law. Their bloodlines joined for political expediency as they walked down the aisle together. Sarath kept her stride deliberately fast, forcing Marcus to hurry to keep pace. She told herself it was not petty. She was simply eager to escape the humiliation. The wedding feast stitched into the night. Sarath sat at the head table with Marcus beside her, picking at exotic dishes from across the empire. Various nobles approached to offer congratulations that felt hollow. Marcus accepted each greeting with polite nods, speaking little, observing much. Your husband is very quiet, remarked Lady Thesara, one of Sarath's few genuine friends. Does he speak our language? He does, Marcus answered before Sarath could respond, his Cauldrith accent nearly perfect. I've been studying for 6 months. Thesara's eyes widened. 6 months? Most humans take years to learn our tongue. Marcus offered a slight smile. I'm motivated to understand my new family. Sarath felt a flicker of surprise, but pushed it down, so he could learn languages quickly. That hardly made him less of a burden. She had seen his dossier. Diplomat, negotiator, cultural liaison. Nothing about combat capability, military service, or useful skills for a warrior's spouse. The file mentioned he was 34, Earth years old, and had served in various peaceful missions. Useless credentials in her world. As the night wore on, Sarath drank heavily from ceremonial wine while Marcus sipped water and watched the crowd. She noticed how his eyes tracked movement, how he seemed to catalog each noble house's position and hierarchy without being told. He asked few questions, but absorbed information like a sponge. Why did you agree to this? Sarath finally asked him, the wine loosening her tongue. You must know what my people think of humans. Marcus turned those calm brown eyes on her. I know exactly what your people think, he said quietly. That we're weak, soft, unworthy of respect. Then why? Because my world needs this alliance. Marcus interrupted gently. And because I was asked to serve, that's what soldiers do. Soldiers? Sereth laughed bitterly. You're a diplomat, among other things, Marcus said. Then returned his attention to his water. The cryptic response irritated her. But before she could press further, Lord Dravik's booming voice cut across the hall. A toast! He shouted, raising his drinking horn. To Lady Sereth and her new pet. May their union be as strong as the human's delicate bones. Laughter erupted from his section. Sereth's markings flared bright with anger. But protocol demanded she accept the toast. She raised her glass with a forced smile while rage burned in her chest. Marcus showed no reaction at all. He simply raised his water glass slightly and took a measured sip. The insult rolled off him like water off stone. The following months were cold and distant. Sereth gave Marcus quarters in the guest wing of her estate. Far from her own chambers, she returned to her fleet duties, spending weeks in space, leaving him alone on the surface. When she was home, they exchanged only necessary pleasantries. Marcus seemed content with the arrangement. He spent his days in the estate's library, reading everything he could about Cauldreth history, military tactics, and culture. The servants reported that he was unfailingly polite, learned their names, asked about their lives. He exercised in the mornings in the private courtyard. Movements the guards couldn't identify, not Cauldreth combat forms. Something else entirely. Sereth watched him once from a balcony. His routine was strange, running in circles for what seemed like hours, then practicing movements with his hands and feet, striking the air with precise control. It looked nothing like proper combat training. No weapons, no power, just a small human going through peculiar motions. She left, unimpressed, 3 months into their marriage. Sereth received an invitation to a state banquet honoring the emperor's name day. All noble houses were required to attend. Marcus would have to accompany her as her legal spouse. Can you conduct yourself properly at a formal event? She asked him the night before, unable to keep the condescension from her voice. Marcus looked up from the tactical manual he was reading, one of her advanced texts on fleet warfare. I've attended hundreds of diplomatic functions, he said calmly. I know how to behave. This isn't some human cocktail party, Sereth snapped. Cauldreth nobility will be looking for any excuse to mock you. They already mock me, Marcus pointed out reasonably. My presence changes nothing. His composure infuriated her. How could he be so calm about the disrespect? Did he have no pride at all? Just stay quiet and follow my lead, she ordered. As you wish, Marcus agreed. Returning to his reading, Sereth stalked away, frustrated that even her anger couldn't provoke a response from him. He was like trying to fight fog, nothing to strike, nothing to impact. The next evening, they departed for the palace. Sereth wore her finest armor, weapons openly displayed as was her right as a fleet commander. Marcus wore formal human attire, a dark suit that looked absurdly plain, next to Cauldreth grandeur. As their transport approached the palace, Sereth glanced at her husband. He sat perfectly still, hands folded, eyes distant. She wondered what went on behind that quiet exterior. Did he resent this marriage as much as she did? Did he feel the weight of being considered inferior? Marcus turned and caught her looking. Something wrong? He asked. No, Sereth said quickly, looking away. You're worried about tonight, Marcus observed. About how my presence reflects on you. It was unsettlingly accurate. I'm concerned about political appearances, she admitted stiffly. Marcus nodded. I understand. I'll do my best not to embarrass you. The simple statement made her feel a twinge of something uncomfortable guilt. Perhaps, but she pushed it aside. This marriage was an obligation. Nothing more. Her feelings didn't matter. And neither did his. The transport landed, and they entered the glittering chaos of Cauldreth high society. neither of them knowing that everything was about to change. The imperial banquet hall blazed with light from 1,000 floating crystals. Nobles from every corner of the empire filled the vast space, their armor and jewels creating a sea of color and wealth. Sareth navigated the crowd with practiced ease, Marcus following 2 steps behind like a shadow. The evening began tolerably enough. Sarah spoke with fellow fleet commanders about recent campaigns, while Marcus stood silently at her side. She noticed how he studied the room, his eyes tracking the movement of guards, noting exits, observing power dynamics in hushed conversations, always watching, always analyzing. Lady Sareth. Admiral Krenix greeted her warmly, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence. Your recent victory at the Helios Rift was masterful. The Emperor himself praised your tactics. Thank you, Admiral, Sareth replied, feeling a flush of pride. The enemy made predictable mistakes, and this must be your husband, Krenix said, his gaze dropping to Marcus. The human diplomat, Marcus Chun, Marcus said, offering a slight bow. Honored to meet you. Admiral, Krenix's expression was polite but dismissive. Yes, well, welcome to the Empire. I hope you find our military discussions not too complicated. It was a subtle insult. Marcus simply smiled. I find them quite educational. Actually, they moved on through the crowd. Sareth noticed the pattern repeating. Polite greetings followed by barely concealed condescension toward Marcus. Some nobles ignored him entirely, speaking to Sareth as if she were alone. Marcus never reacted, never showed offense, maintaining that same calm demeanor that somehow made her more irritated than if he'd shown anger. The feast began with traditional ceremony. The Emperor, ancient and magnificent in golden armor, gave a speech about unity and strength. Sarah sat at a table with other high-ranking nobles, Marcus beside her. She picked at the elaborate dishes while he ate sparingly, always aware of his surroundings. Then Lord Dravik arrived at their table. He was massive, even for a Cauldrith, standing nearly 9 feet tall with 4 arms like tree trunks. Scars covered his armor from countless arena fights. His clan followed behind him, warriors and schemers who had opposed Sarath's family for generations. Lady Sareth. Dravik boomed, his voice carrying across nearby tables. How delightful to see you enjoying the festivities with your companion. The word companion was deliberate, not husband, not spouse, but companion, the term used for pets. Sarath's markings flared warning colors. Lord Dravik. How kind of you to greet us. Dravik's eyes fixed on Marcus with undisguised contempt. Tell me, human, do you understand what's being said? Or does Sareth need to translate for you? I understand perfectly, Marcus replied, his tone unchanged. Remarkable. Dravik laughed, turning to his followers. It speaks our language. What a clever little creature. Conversations at nearby tables stopped. Everyone was watching now. This was more than casual mockery. Dravik was making a public challenge to Sarath's honor. Lord Dravik, you forget yourself, Sarah said coldly. Marcus is my legal husband and entitled to respect. Respect? Dravik's voice dripped with scorn. For this hairless weakling? This soft-skinned nothing? You dishonor yourself, Sareth, and your entire bloodline by betting such a pathetic specimen. Gasps echoed through the hall. That was a direct insult, one that demanded answer under ancient law. Sareth stood, her 4 arms tensing for violence, but Marcus spoke first, his voice quiet but clear. Lord Dravik, your words insult not just me, but Lady Sareth. Under Cauldrith law, I have the right to answer this insult in the proving grounds. Silence fell like a hammer. Dravik stared at Marcus, then threw his head back and laughed. You? Challenge me? A human in the proving grounds? I invoke my right as Sarath's husband, Marcus continued calmly. Or does Cauldrith law not apply when it's inconvenient? Sareth grabbed Marcus's arm. No, You don't understand what you're doing. Marcus looked at her for the first time with something other than passive acceptance. His eyes were hard. I understand perfectly. He insulted you. That requires an answer. He'll kill you. Sareth hissed. Dravak has fought in 100 arena battles. He's a champion gladiator. Then it will be educational. Marcus said. Dravak's laughter subsided into cruel amusement. Very well. Little human, I accept your challenge. 3 days from now, in the Grand Arena. We fight to submission or death. Agreed. Marcus said without hesitation. The crowd erupted in whispers. This was unprecedented. A human challenging a Cauldrith champion. It would be a massacre. Entertainment for the masses. Sareth felt sick back at the estate. Sareth confronted Marcus in fury. Are you insane? Do you have a death wish? He dishonored you, Marcus said simply, removing his jacket. I couldn't let that stand. I can defend my own honor. Sareth shouted. I don't need a human sacrificing himself for my reputation. This isn't about your need, Marcus replied, his calm finally cracking to show steel underneath. It's about what's right. He insulted you publicly. Someone had to answer. I'm your husband. That makes it my responsibility. Husband in name only. The words came out harsher than she intended. Marcus absorbed the blow, then nodded. True, but the name still means something to me, even if it doesn't to you. Sareth felt that uncomfortable guilt again. Stronger now. Marcus, Dravak will tear you apart. He has cybernetic enhancements, decades of combat experience, and weighs twice what you do. I know, Marcus said. Then withdraw the challenge. There's no shame in. There is shame. Marcus interrupted. In backing down from a just fight, I won't do it. Sarah stared at this strange, stubborn human. For the first time, she saw something other than a political burden. There was steel in him, hidden beneath the quiet diplomat facade. Fine, she snapped. You want to die for honor? At least train properly. You have 3 days. I'll need access to your training facilities. Marcus said. Done. And I'm assigning you a combat instructor. Marcus shook his head. No instructor. I'll train alone. That's foolish. Alone. Marcus repeated firmly. Sarah threw up her hands in frustration. You're impossible. Die however you want. She stormed out, leaving Marcus standing in the dim room, already beginning to stretch his muscles with practiced efficiency. The next morning, Sarath's curiosity overcame her anger. She went to the observation deck above the training arena, a space reserved for evaluating warriors. Below, Marcus was working. He wore minimal clothing, just shorts and a shirt. His body was lean, not bulky like Cauldrith warriors, but every muscle was defined. He started with running, lap after lap around the arena at a steady pace that never flagged. After an hour of continuous running, Sareth expected him to stop. He didn't. He ran for 2 hours, then 3. Doesn't he get tired? She muttered finally. Marcus stopped running and moved to combat practice. But it wasn't any fighting style Sareth recognized. He practiced strikes with hands and feet, but also elbows, knees, head. Every part of his body was a potential weapon. The movements were economical, precise, wasting no energy. Then he did something that made Sarath's blood run cold. Marcus brought up a holographic display of Cauldrith anatomy. He studied it with intense focus, then practiced strikes against a training dummy, targeting specific locations, nerve clusters, joint weaknesses, vulnerable organs. He was systematically identifying every weak point in Cauldrith physiology. She watched him work for 6 hours straight. No breaks, no water, just relentless practice. When he finally stopped, his body was drenched in sweat, but his eyes were sharp and focused. Sareth left the observation deck with her mind spinning. This wasn't the soft diplomat she'd married. Something else lurked beneath that quiet surface. Something patient, methodical, and utterly focused. over the next 2 days. Marcus maintained the same brutal routine, running for hours, studying anatomy, practicing strikes with machine-like repetition. He ate precisely measured meals, slept exactly 6 hours, then resumed training. It was inhuman in its discipline. On the night before the fight, Sarah found Marcus in the library, reading texts on Cauldrith combat philosophy. "You should be resting," she said. "I will, soon," Marcus replied. Not looking up, Sarah sat down across from him. "Marcus, I've been watching you train. You're better than I expected. But Dravik will underestimate me." Marcus finished. "That's the advantage." "It's not enough of an advantage." Marcus finally looked at her. "Sareth, I know you think I'm weak. Your whole society thinks humans are weak. Maybe you're right, but weakness and strength come in different forms. What does that mean?" "You'll see tomorrow," Marcus said. "One way or another." He stood and bowed slightly. "I should rest now. Thank you for the training facilities." As he left, Sareth felt fear for the first time in years. Not for herself, but for this strange human who had somehow become more than an obligation. Tomorrow, the entire empire would watch him fight tomorrow. Everything would change. The grand arena of Cauldrith Prime held 50,000 spectators, and every seat was filled. This wasn't just combat. It was spectacle. A human challenging a Cauldrith champion was unprecedented. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. Eager to see the inevitable slaughter, Sarah sat in the noble box, her markings dim with dread. Around her, other nobles made casual bets on how quickly Dravik would end the fight. Lord Desic wagered 30 seconds. Lady Varain guessed a full minute if the human ran. "Your husband is very brave," Desara said quietly beside her. "Or very foolish." "Both," Sareth muttered. Gripping the railing, the arena floor was a circle of packed sand 50 meters. Across, weapons lined the walls. Traditional blades, plasma staffs, shock nets, all legal for use in the proving grounds. At opposite ends, 2 gates stood closed. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. "Citizens of the Empire, today we witness a challenge of honor. Lord Dravik of House Dravik, champion of 17 arena victories, answers the challenge of Marcus Chen, human spouse of Lady Sareth Valkaran." The crowd roared. Some cheered for Dravik. Others laughed at the absurdity. "Combatants, enter!" The gates opened. Dravik strode out in full combat armor, reinforced plates covering his massive frame. 4 arms, each holding a weapon. Plasma blade, shock staff, throwing spikes, and a net launcher. His armor gleamed with championship medals. He raised his weapons and the crowd screamed approval. Then Marcus walked out. He wore minimal armor, light chestplate, arm guards, leg protection, all human-made and looking fragile compared to Cauldrith war gear. He carried 2 short combat knives, utterly inadequate against Dravik's arsenal. But what struck Sareth was his face, completely calm. Eyes focused, breathing slow and controlled. The crowd's laughter was deafening. "Look at the little human," someone shouted. He brought knives to a plasma fight. Dravik bellowed his amusement. "Is that all human? Did your people not have better weapons for you?" Marcus didn't respond. He walked to the center of the arena, knives held loosely at his sides. His eyes tracked every detail. The sand's consistency, the lighting, the weapon racks. Dravik's stance. The announcer raised his flag. "Combat begins when the flag drops. Fight to submission or death. May honor be satisfied." The flag dropped. Dravik charged immediately, 4 arms whirling with weapons. He crossed half the arena in 3 massive strides. Plasma blades sweeping in an arc that would cut Marcus in half. Marcus wasn't there. He had moved the instant before Dravik struck, sliding left with minimal motion. The plasma blade missed by centimeters. Dravik's shock staff came around in a backswing. Marcus ducked under it. Still moving, never stopping, Run, little human, run. The crowd jeered, but Sarah saw what they didn't. Marcus wasn't running. He was studying every attack Dravik launched. Marcus avoided with the minimum movement necessary. His eyes locked on his opponent. He was reading Dravik's patterns, timing, rhythm. Dravik grew frustrated. He unleashed a barrage of attacks. Blade, staff, throwing spikes launched in rapid succession. Marcus weaved through them like water flowing around stones. One spike grazed his shoulder, drawing blood. The crowd cheered, "First blood to Dravik." The announcer shouted, but Marcus's expression never changed. He circled, keeping distance, watching. Dravik laughed. "Is this all you can do? Dodge like a coward? Fight me." For the first time, Marcus spoke, his voice carrying across the silent moment. "I am fighting. You just don't recognize it." Then Marcus attacked. It happened so fast that half the crowd missed it. Marcus closed the distance in a sprint. Not toward Dravik's weapons, but toward his center. Dravik swung with all four arms simultaneously. A killing web of blades and energy. Marcus dropped and slid under the attacks like he'd choreographed it, his body horizontal as he passed beneath Dravik. He struck, one knife slashing across the back of Dravik's left knee where the armor had a gap. Dravik roared and stumbled. Before he could recover, Marcus was up and moving. He didn't retreat. He stayed close, inside Dravik's weapon range where the long blades couldn't angle properly. His knife found another gap, the inside elbow of Dravik's lower right arm. The shock staff fell from nerveless fingers. The crowd's laughter died. This wasn't going as expected. Dravik swung wild, trying to crush Marcus with sheer force. But Marcus was always moving, always one step ahead. He struck with surgical precision. Nerve clusters, joint weak points, gaps in armor. Every hit was calculated. Every cut had purpose. "He's cutting him apart," the Zara whispered in shock. Sarah leaned forward, her heart's pounding. She had never seen anything like this. Marcus fought with a precision that was almost scientific. No wasted movement, no emotion, just pure calculated violence. Dravik was bleeding from a dozen wounds now, none fatal, but each one compromising his ability to fight. His left leg barely supported weight. His right arms had limited mobility. Rage replaced his earlier confidence. "Stand still," Dravik bellowed. He triggered his armor's emergency power, flooding his system with combat stimulants. His bio-enhancements kicked in. Enhanced strength, accelerated reflexes, pain suppression. This was his trump card. The modification that had won him 17 championships. Marcus saw it coming. For the first time, he smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Dravik charged with enhanced speed, faster than before. His plasma blade came down in a strike that would split a boulder. Marcus sidestepped. Not perfectly. The blade caught his arm guard and sheared through it, cutting into his bicep. Blood flowed, but Marcus used the momentum, spinning with the blow instead of against it. As he spun, his knife found Dravik's exposed armpit, where four arms meant more gaps in protection. Dravik screamed. The plasma blade fell. Two of his arms hung useless. The crowd was silent now, witnessing something they'd never seen. Their champion being systematically dismantled by a human. Marcus didn't stop. He moved like a surgeon, like a machine, like death itself. Another cut to Dravik's hamstring, another to the elbow. Each strike precisely placed to disable, not kill. Dravik fell to one knee, his enhancements failing as blood loss mounted. He still had two working arms and swung desperately with his remaining weapons. Marcus caught the wrist of Dravik's net launcher with one hand. With the other, he drove his knife into the servo joint of Dravik's shoulder armor. The mechanism sparked and died. Then Marcus did something that made Sarath's blood freeze. He stepped close to Dravik, looked him in the eyes, and spoke quietly, words only Dravik could hear. Whatever he said made the massive warrior's eyes go wide with fear. Dravik threw down his last weapon. "I submit," he gasped. "I submit." The arena exploded in chaos. Silence gave way to shocked murmurs, then arguments, then grudging cheers. The human had won. The impossible had happened. The announcer seemed stunned. The challenge is satisfied. Marcus Chen of Earth is victorious. Medical teams rushed to Dravik while Marcus walked calmly toward the exit gate. Blood ran down his arm from his wound, but he ignored it. His face remained impassive. Sareth bolted from the noble box and ran to the arena floor. She reached Marcus just as he exited the gate. "Marcus." She grabbed his uninjured arm. "What did you say to him?" "At the end?" Marcus looked at her with those calm brown eyes. "I told him I'd been pulling my strikes, that I knew where his primary hearts were, where his brainstem connected, where every artery ran close to the surface. I told him I could have killed him at any point in the last 5 minutes. Sareth stared. "Could you have?" "Yes," Marcus said simply. "But killing him would have been wasteful. I just needed to answer the insult." "How?" Sareth demanded. "How did you do this?" "You're not enhanced, not augmented. You're human," Marcus finished. "We study. Sareth, we learn. We find weaknesses and exploit them. Your people rely on strength and honor. My people learn to survive by being smarter. Faster thinkers, better at adapting. Medical staff surrounded them, insisting Marcus needed treatment. As they led him away, he looked back at Sareth. "I was never weak," he said. "You just didn't know what human strength looked like." The medical bay was quiet except for the hum of healing equipment. Sareth sat beside Marcus's bed while a doctor sealed his arm wound with regenerative foam. "The cut is clean," the doctor reported. "Muscle damage minimal. He'll heal fully in a few days." After the doctor left, Sareth finally spoke. "I owe you an apology." Marcus turned his head to look at her. "For what?" "For everything, for treating you like a burden, for not seeing you as you are." She paused, struggling with unfamiliar emotions. "You fought for my honor today. No one has ever done that for me." "You're my wife," Marcus said, "even if you don't think of me as your husband." "I was wrong," Sareth admitted. "About you. About humans. What else was I wrong about?" Marcus smiled slightly. "A lot, probably, but we have time to figure it out." Outside the medical bay, the Empire was already buzzing with news. The human had defeated a champion. Earth species was more dangerous than anyone had believed. Some called for investigation into human capabilities. Others demanded respect, but in that quiet medical room, Sareth looked at Marcus with new eyes. She had married him for obligation. Seeing only a political pawn, now she saw a warrior of a different kind. Patient, analytical, utterly focused, not weaker than her people. Just different. "Teach me," she said suddenly. "Teach me how humans fight." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I've been a warrior my whole life, and I've never seen any. 6 months had changed everything. Sareth stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Endless Dawn, watching tactical displays with Marcus at her side. He wore a fleet operations uniform now, his combat knives still at his belt. The crew no longer whispered about the weak human. They looked to him for insights that had saved lives in 3 skirmishes. "The formation is holding," reported her tactical officer, Commander VX. "But those are just scouts." Marcus studied the sensor data, his eyes moving across screens with practiced efficiency. "They're probing for weaknesses, testing response times." Sareth nodded. "Agreed. How long until the main fleet arrives?" "Based on their velocity?" 4 hours, Marcus said. "But Reavers don't think like we do. They might accelerate regardless of the damage it does to their crews." The Reavers had emerged from Deep Space 3 weeks ago, a hive-minded species that consumed everything in their path: resources, technology, entire populations. They had destroyed civilizations that had stood for millennia. Now they were pushing into Cauldrith territory. First contact had been catastrophic. The Reavers didn't negotiate, didn't retreat, didn't fear death. They simply attacked in endless waves. Preliminary battles showed that standard tactics were nearly useless. The Reavers adapted instantly. Learning from every engagement, Sareth had been given command of the defensive fleet. 30 warships, thousands of warriors, the last line before the core worlds. Casualty projections were grim. Lady Sareth, VHEX reported. We're receiving transmission from Fleet Command. Admiral Krenix wants a status update. The Admiral's three-eyed face appeared on the view screen. Commander Valkoren, your fleet is authorized to engage the moment the Reavers enter weapons range. Hold them as long as possible. Reinforcements are being assembled. Understood. Admiral, Sareth replied. We won't let them through. Krenix's eyes shifted to Marcus. Chun, I've read your tactical analyses, unconventional but sound. Do you have any insights on the Reaver assault patterns? Marcus stepped forward. Yes. Sir, the Reavers excel at ship-to-ship combat and boarding actions. Their hive mind makes coordination perfect, but that's also their weakness. Explain. They share information instantly, but they also share assumptions. Marcus brought up a tactical display. If we can make them believe something false at a strategic level, the entire Hive fleet will act on that false information. Krenix leaned forward. Deception on a fleet-wide scale, that's never worked against them. Because no one's tried it right, Marcus said. We need to make them think we're weaker than we are. Then exploit their overconfidence. Risky, Krenix muttered. But we're out of safe options. Proceed with your plan, Chun. Sareth, give him whatever authority he needs. The transmission ended. Sareth turned to Marcus. You really think we can fool a hive mind? I think they're used to winning, Marcus replied. That makes them predictable in their own way. The Reaver fleet arrived early. Alarms screamed across the endless dawn as 40 Reaver bioships emerged from faster-than-light travel. They were nightmarish things, organic hulls covered in chitinous armor, weapons that fired accelerated bone fragments and acid, ships that screamed in rage across all frequencies, battle stations. Sareth commanded, execute Marcus's plan. The human had proposed something audacious. Instead of forming a defensive line, the Cauldrith fleet would appear to panic, breaking formation and falling back in disarray. It went against every military instinct. Reavers saw the chaos and pressed their advantage. Their ships surged forward, hungry for the kill. They're taking the bait, Marcus reported calmly. Now, the fleeing Cauldrith ships suddenly reversed. Weapons hot, they'd lured the Reavers into a kill zone filled with deployed mines and focused fire lanes. The first wave of Reaver ships ran straight into concentrated plasma fire. 8 Reaver ships died in the opening salvo, but the rest kept coming. The battle became chaos. Ship-to-ship combat at ranges where shields meant nothing and armor was all that mattered. Reaver boarding pods launched like missiles, slamming into Cauldrith hulls and disgorging nightmare creatures. Reavers have breached decks 7 through 12. VHEX shouted. Security teams are engaging. Sareth heard the screams over the comm. Reaver combat forms were terrifying. Multi-limbed creatures of claw and tooth. Feeling no pain, coordinated by the hive mind. Hand-to-hand combat with them was a losing proposition. Marcus, we need to evacuate those decks, Sareth said. No, Marcus replied. His voice suddenly hard. We board them. What? Marcus was already moving to the communication station. All human units. This is Chan. Execute Epsilon Protocol. Human units? Sareth demanded. What human units? Then she saw them on the internal sensors. Squads of humans in powered armor, emerging from cargo holds where they'd been hidden. 40 soldiers, all moving with the same focused efficiency Marcus had shown in the arena. You smuggled a strike force onto my ship? Sareth was caught between anger and amazement. Earth's contribution to the Alliance, Marcus said, strapping on his own combat gear. We specialize in hostile boarding actions. Permission to deploy? Sareth looked at the tactical situation. 3 Reaver ships had clamped onto Cauldrith vessels, pumping warriors into their corridors. Standard doctrine was to seal those sections and vent them to space. Permission granted, she said. Don't die. Marcus smiled that dangerous smile. Not planning to. The human strike teams hit the Reavers like precision weapons. Sareth watched the battle feeds in shock. The humans moved through the corridors in perfect coordination, their weapons firing in controlled bursts. But what amazed her was their endurance. Cauldrith warriors fought in short, intense bursts, even enhanced soldiers tired after 10 minutes of sustained combat. The humans fought for an hour straight without slowing. Marcus led one team personally, his combat knives replaced with human plasma rifles and breaching charges. They pushed through Deck 7, clearing Reaver combat forms with brutal efficiency. When their ammunition ran low, they switched to blades and kept fighting. They're not stopping, the Hex whispered, watching the feeds. How are they not exhausted? Humans are persistence hunters, Sareth murmured, remembering Marcus's words. They outlast everything. Marcus's team reached a Reaver boarding pod and did something insane. Instead of destroying it, they entered it. The pod was still attached to a Reaver bioship. Chun, what are you doing? Sareth demanded over the comm. Sending a message, Marcus replied, his breathing heavy but controlled. The human team fought through the pod's interior. The Reaver hive mind diverted resources to stop them, pulling warriors from other boarding actions. Exactly what Marcus wanted. All ships. Reavers are withdrawing from boarding actions to reinforce their flagships, Hex reported. Security teams are retaking lost sections. Marcus's team planted antimatter charges in the Reaver ship's biocore, the organic heart of the vessel, where the hive mind's local node resided. Charges set, Marcus reported. Extraction in 30 seconds. The team ran. Reaver warriors flooded the corridors behind them. But the humans had timed it perfectly. They crossed back into the boarding pod, just as the charges detonated. The Reaver bioship tore itself apart from the inside. The hive mind screamed. Every Reaver in the battle zone felt the death of their node. For 5 seconds, they were disoriented, uncoordinated. 5 seconds was all the Cauldrith fleet needed. All ships, full offensive. Sareth commanded, target the disoriented vessels. The Cauldrith fleet unleashed everything. 15 more Reaver ships died before the hive mind could compensate. The remaining Reavers began to withdraw, retreating to regroup. They're running, VX said in disbelief. We won. Marcus returned to the bridge covered in alien blood, his armor scorched and dented. We bought time. They'll be back with more ships. Sareth crossed to him, not caring that her crew was watching. She gripped his shoulders. That was the most insane, reckless, brilliant tactic I've ever seen. Marcus smiled wearily. Thank my team. Earth's endurance cores. Best soldiers humanity has. Endurance cores? Sareth asked. Soldiers trained for wars of extinction, Marcus explained. When your species faces annihilation, you learn to fight differently. Not for glory or honor, but for survival. We fight until we win or until there's nothing left to fight with. Sareth looked at this man she had married. She'd thought she understood him after the arena. She'd been wrong. The arena had been a demonstration. This was who Marcus really was. A soldier from a species that had fought its way up from a dangerous world. Had survived conflicts that would have broken other civilizations. How many wars has Earth fought? She asked quietly. Thousands, Marcus said. We spent millennia fighting each other before we reached the stars. Every human alive is descended from survivors. That's what we do. Sereth, we survive. The fleet regrouped, counting losses. 5 ships destroyed. 8 more heavily damaged, but the Reavers had lost 23 vessels. An impossible exchange ratio. Admiral Krenix's transmission came through. His expression stunned. Commander Valkorn, Marcus Chun. The Emperor himself has been watching the battle feeds. He wants a full report on these Endurance Corps units and their capabilities. I'll prepare one, Marcus said. The Emperor also wants to meet you personally, Krenix continued. He's considering expanding human integration into our military structure. After the Admiral signed off, Sereth pulled Marcus aside. The war lasted 3 weeks, 21 days of continuous combat across 12 continents and orbital space around Caldrith Prime itself. The Reavers had bypassed the outer defenses and struck at the heart of the Empire. Billions of lives hung in the balance. Marcus hadn't slept in 4 days. He stood in the Planetary Defense Command Center, coordinating 17 different battlefronts simultaneously. Holographic displays surrounded him showing troop movements, supply lines, enemy positions. His eyes were bloodshot but focused. His voice hoarse but steady as he issued orders to units across the planet. 3rd Battalion. Fall back to Grid 7 Alpha Engineering Corps. I need those bridges demolished in 10 minutes. Air support, redirect to the southern continent. Sector 9 is collapsing. Commanders who had once mocked humans now waited for his orders without question. Marcus had proven himself in blood and fire. His tactical mind saw patterns others missed. Found solutions where none seemed to exist. Sereth led the orbital defense, her fleet fighting a running battle against Reaver bioships that seemed endless. She was exhausted too, but every time she felt like breaking, she thought of Marcus down there on the surface, fighting for her people, and found the strength to continue. Lady Sereth. The Eastern Fleet is requesting support, her tactical officer reported. Negative. We're stretched too thin. Sereth checked her displays. Tell them to hold for another hour. Marcus is preparing a ground offensive that should relieve pressure. It had become natural. This coordination between them, she commanded the space battle. He managed ground operations. They worked as one mind with 2 bodies. Trust built through shared struggle. Then everything changed. A massive Reaver bioship, 10 times larger than any they'd seen, emerged from behind the moon. It radiated malevolence even through sensor readings. What is that? Vhex whispered. Marcus's voice crackled over the cum from the surface. That's the Supreme Hive Mind's avatar, the central node controlling this entire invasion. How do you know? Sereth demanded. Because I've been studying Reaver behavior for 3 weeks. They've been testing us, learning, but always with distributed intelligence. That ship is different. It's where their god lives. The Avatar ship began descending toward the planet. Ignoring the fleet's attacks, Reaver warriors poured from it in unprecedented numbers, forming a protective swarm. It's coming for the capital, Marcus said, his voice grim. For the Emperor, the Reaver strategy became clear. Kill the Emperor, decapitate the Empire, shatter morale. The Avatar carried enough firepower to level the capital city. All forces, converge on the capital. Sereth ordered. We can't let that thing reach the surface. But the Reavers had planned for this. Their forces surged across all fronts simultaneously, making retreat impossible. Every unit was pinned down. Marcus appeared on her view screen. Behind him, explosions lit the night sky. Sereth, I need you to trust me, always, she said without hesitation. I'm going to face the Avatar on the ground. That's insane. That thing is the size of a mountain. It'll kill you. Marcus's smile was sad. Probably, but someone has to buy time for evacuations. The Emperor needs to survive. Then I'm coming with you, Sereth said firmly. Your fleet needs you. My husband needs me more. Sareth turned to VX. Commander, you have the bridge. Execute defensive pattern Omega. Lady Sareth. You can't. That's an order. Sareth was already running for the shuttle bay. She took a dropship straight down through the chaos. Reaver flyers attacked, but she flew like a demon possessed, weaving through fire until she reached the capital's outskirts, where Marcus waited with a small team of Endurance Corps soldiers. Sareth leaped from the ship before it fully landed. You're not doing this alone. Marcus looked at her, and for the first time in days, some warmth returned to his exhausted eyes. I was hoping you'd say that. The Avatar ship was landing half a kilometer away, crushing buildings under its mass. The ground shook as something emerged from its bioorganic hull. The Reaver Supreme's physical form was nightmare-made flesh, 30 meters tall, a fusion of countless species it had consumed, covered in armor that had survived the deaths of civilizations. It had killed champions and heroes for thousands of years across the galaxy. It saw Marcus and Sareth, and it laughed, a sound like worlds dying. Little things. It spoke in a voice that was 1,000 voices. The Hive has learned about you, human. You have fought well, but this ends now. Marcus drew his combat knives. They looked like toys before the Avatar. Sareth. When I move left, you go right, he said calmly. Aim for the joint clusters on the legs. Marcus. We can't win this. We don't have to win, Marcus replied. We just have to last long enough. The Avatar attacked. It moved with horrible speed for something so large. One massive limb swept toward them like a falling building. Marcus and Sareth split, rolling in opposite directions. Sareth fired her plasma rifle at the leg joints. The Avatar's armor absorbed the shots without damage. Marcus threw a grenade that exploded harmlessly against chitinous plating. They were insects fighting a god. The Avatar's next attack nearly killed them both. It slammed the ground with enough force to create shockwaves. Sareth was thrown 20 meters. Marcus dodged but barely, his armor cracking from the pressure. This is hopeless, Sareth shouted, struggling to her feet. Nothing is hopeless. Marcus called back. Keep moving. Study it. Find the weakness. They fought for 10 minutes that felt like hours. Every attack they made was useless. Every dodge took them closer to exhaustion. The Avatar was toying with them, enjoying their futile struggle. Marcus was bleeding from a dozen wounds. Sareth's armor was shattered on one side, but neither of them stopped. Why won't you die? The Avatar demanded, frustrated. Your bodies are broken. Your weapons are useless. Submit. Marcus laughed, actually laughed, and it sounded slightly unhinged. You don't understand humans, do you? We're the species that looked at extinction and said, not today. He attacked again, knowing it was futile, but attacking anyways. Aerith saw something then that took her breath away. Marcus wasn't trying to win. He was refusing to lose. There was a difference. Winning required superior strength. Not losing just required stubbornness, endurance. The refusal to accept defeat. She understood finally what made humans special. Marcus, she shouted, the primary brain cluster. Between the upper limbs. Marcus saw it, a slight discoloration in the armor where different biomaterials met. A weak point. But 30 meters up, I need a boost. He yelled. Sareth didn't question. She interlaced her 4 hands. Marcus ran at her full speed, and she launched him upward with all her strength. The Avatar tried to swat him, but Marcus had timed it perfectly. He sailed past the grasping limb and sank both knives into the weak point. The Avatar screamed. It wasn't a killing blow. The knives were too small. But Marcus had planted something else. The last antimatter charge from his gear. Sareth, run! He shouted, hanging from the knives embedded in the Avatar's flesh. Not without you. She fired grappling cables and swung up toward him. The Avatar thrashed, trying to dislodge them both. Marcus activated the charge. 5-second timer. Sareth reached him, grabbed him with 3 arms, and they fell together as the charge detonated. The explosion tore through the Avatar's brain cluster. The massive form staggered. Neural pathways severed. It wasn't dead, but it was wounded. Disoriented, they hit the ground hard. Marcus's leg broke. Sarath's ribs cracked. But they were alive. The Avatar was regenerating. But slowly, without its central intelligence. The Reaver forces across the planet suddenly lost coordination. All units, Marcus gasped into his cum. Fighting through pain. The hive mind is disrupted. Press the attack now. Drive them back. Across the planet, Kaldrith forces rallied, with the hive intelligence damaged. Reavers became individuals, confused and vulnerable. The tide of battle shifted, in orbit. Sarath's fleet pressed their advantage. The Avatar ship, no longer receiving commands, began to retreat. The Avatar itself tried to flee, stumbling toward its ship. But human and Kaldrith forces had surrounded it. Thousands of soldiers poured fire into its wounds. It took another hour to kill. Even wounded, even dying, it fought with terrible strength. But in the end, it fell. The Reaver invasion collapsed. Without their god node, the hive mind fractured into competing impulses. Ships fled in all directions. Ground forces dissolved into chaos. Marcus woke in a medical bay 3 days later. Sareth sat beside his bed, her own injuries bandaged but healing. When his eyes opened, she smiled, a real, genuine smile he'd rarely seen. "Welcome back," she said softly. "Did we win?" Marcus asked, his voice raspy. "We won. The Reavers are in full retreat. The Empire is saved." She took his hand. "Because of you, because of us." Marcus corrected. The door opened and Emperor Kaldrith himself entered, ancient beyond measure, his armor bearing the marks of 10,000 years. He looked at Marcus with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. "Marcus, Chun of Earth," the Emperor said formally, "you have served the Empire beyond measure. You have earned honor and glory. We grant you the title, Korvath, the Eternal Walker." "The battle deity," Marcus tried to sit up. "Your Majesty, I was just—" "You were exceptional," the Emperor interrupted. "We have watched your species with interest since first contact. Now we understand what makes you dangerous. You do not accept defeat ever." He placed a medal on Marcus's chest. "The Empire owes humanity a debt.